Good evening. We want to welcome our viewers of the Johnson City Government Information Channel on Charter Cable Channel 192 and Comcast Cable Channel 17 to this live telecast of the July 10, 2018 Johnson City Regional Planning Commission meeting. This meeting will be rebroadcast on Friday, July 13th, 2018 at 12 p.m. noon. We'll go ahead and call our meeting to order, and we will ask Commissioner Cooper to go ahead and proceed with our pledge and our prayer.
Let's pray. Father in heaven, we thank you for the opportunity to celebrate freedom this past week, and especially those around the globe who are helping to protect that freedom. We ask you to give us wisdom to understand this community and its needs, and to make decisions that provide for the best possible community for future generations. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And the next item on our agenda is the actual approval of the agenda. We have a motion to approve. Any additions or amendments?
So moved.
Motion to move. Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Next up is approval of the minutes from last month's meeting, June 19, 2018.
Move we approve.
A motion to approve, Commissioner Cooper, and a second, Commissioner Harrell. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion approves. We have no unfinished business at this time, so we'll move to new business, which will be the consider a rezoning request at 1927 West Walnut.
Good evening. Yes, this rezoning that is before you tonight is at 1927 West Walnut Street, which is a 1.37 acre out parcel that is part of the shopping center, Lincoln Square, where Kroger is located. It fronts Walnut Street, but it is accessed along a private common space driveway, which is part of the shopping center. While there are some concerns about circulation related to the residential traffic in this commercial area, staff considers that to be a civil matter, seeing that these are private easements that create access within the shopping center. And so we're focused on how this relates to our specific ordinances in our jurisdiction. With that, staff recommends to approve the rezoning and the associated concept plan with one condition. The condition relates to 3-4.1.2 of the subdivision regulations, which refers to multifamily rental development, which this is. A concept plan that proposes to develop 20 apartment units. It states that adequate pedestrian access to connect each building to the nearest public right-of-way shall be provided, and so we are requesting that a pedestrian access path be constructed from the buildings down to West Walnut Street to connect to the existing sidewalk network that is there. But we do recommend the rezoning from PB to R5 because this will provide infill development on a vacant parcel, and it will create some transition from this commercial district to a high-density residential as it approaches the low-density existing single-family neighborhood that's there. That existing neighborhood is also zoned for apartments, as well, as you can see on the image on the left. It's R3 and R5 mixed through there. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Manning. Do you have any questions for staff at this time? Okay.
Do you have a definition of the extent of the sidewalk, Matt?
Of the extent?
Yeah, from where to where?
It is, yeah, so it's about 375 feet and it can be 4 foot wide. Go back one. On the concept plan, you can see where this entrance is, so it would be to extend it down here.
All the way from the entrance down to West Walter Street.
Yeah, the sidewalk has already been constructed. Typically, we would require that the sidewalk be extended along the front of the parcel. However, that portion of the sidewalk was relatively recently already constructed when this interchange was reworked by Public Works. So they brought the sidewalk to here, to this point. And so that area has already been graded from what we can tell. And we've evaluated the kind of the pros and cons of this as well. So we do think that this would be a benefit to help close the gap in the existing sidewalk network. There are sidewalks throughout the shopping center, and there are sidewalks on Walnut Street as well.
I have a question.
Yes.
With the new development, is there going to be a different, or are there going to be a buffer on both sides of the, one for the commercial side as well as one for the residential side, or?
The buffer is required on this side and then on the residential side.
But nothing on the commercial side?
Nothing right here on this this is zone commercial. Actually, that actually is single family use, or no, it's a multifamily use there. So I need to double check that to make sure, but the main buffer being shown here is along the single family and then on this rear side as well. But there's no buffer here, correct? It's not required. The impact matrix shows that they're equivalent impact, so they don't require a buffer.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Manley. Do we have any further questions for staff? Thank you. We may call you back up. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and open up public comment. If there's anybody here wishing to speak for or against this rezoning request, we'd sure ask you to go ahead and present to the podium and present your name and address.
Hey, my name is Brian Sanjay. The address is 2389 Sawyer's Pond in Johnson City. This is a project that I've been working on for about 6 months, trying to figure out, is there anything that can be done with this piece of property? And we've thrown around a lot of different ideas. I've got a partner, and we've been working on it for quite a bit. But we came up with this concept of 20 units, one-bedroom units that we thought, hey, we might be able to benefit everybody in this. You know, first and foremost, you want to make a project that's going to be it's going to be successful. So in everything that we've done here, we've tried to plan out something that would be successful. And I guess so far to this point, you know, Mr. Manley has just made one comment about the sidewalk, and I think he's doing a great job, and he proposes that sidewalk come all the way up that hill, which is fairly steep. There's not a whole lot we can do with it except keep it groomed and making it look good as far as grass grows. But there is we met with a couple other people from, I think Hassan was there and Alan Cantrell was there. There's a sidewalk that doesn't go quite all the way. It's beside Zaxby's there, and it doesn't reach all the way to the end. And our understanding about a week ago was, hey, the regulations will be met if we just extend that little sidewalk there. And you know, there's a lot of challenges here, and just to get to this point, even if we get past zoning, it doesn't mean it's 100% we're going to do this deal, because it's going to be expensive. So any extra cost that is associated with it is going to either help or hurt. You know, in this situation, if we can meet the code by just extending the Zaxby sidewalk, we would say, hey, let's do that instead of, because the sidewalk that's down there along the West Walnut.
Would you mind drawing out this,
back
what
here.
you're talking about here?
There's
Where
a sidewalk
the sidewalk is that...
Right in this area in the front,
Mhm.
and then it continues on right here. and it's kind of the continuation of that sidewalk that goes here. But then there's a sidewalk that comes up the hill here beside Zaxby's, and I believe it stops. So if we continue it on towards our site, well, that's kind of like a sidewalk continuation of all of this. So it's just added expense that we really don't want to have to get into, because we know when you do a development, there's always going to be expenses that you don't see, and there's going to come up, and we don't need any more.
Just a question, you're made aware of, it doesn't have to be a frank sidewalk, but a pedestrian access path. For not a 5-foot sidewalk, but a 4-foot just
Right.
paved pathway, right?
We would ask that, no, I understand that.
I didn't
I'm just
know if you
asking
were aware of that or not.
I am, but.
And do you have, I mean, just, I'm curious, do you have the ability to extend that sidewalk over there on the
Well,
Zaxby's thing? Is that on?
I believe
Is that someone
I
else's
believe-
land, or what are we doing with that there?
That's a good question. I would assume so, but that's just because there was a meeting about it, and it sounded like that's something we should do, but I would
Okay.
assume we could extend it. I don't know why Zaxby's would be opposed to it, but at the same time.
We can have staff speak to that. I appreciate
Sure.
you bringing that up. Obviously, the ordinances are that a residential organization or a residential area of 3 buildings or more has to have access to a public, the public right-of-way or public street or public sidewalk. And so I think they're just trying to find that regulation. We can probably get Mr. Manley or Mr. Cantrell to speak to that for us here in a moment. Thank you for bringing that up. And let me not interrupt any further. Continue.
Well, the other thing I would just say, I have a feeling that potentially that somebody may be opposed to it, which if I lived around here and there's something going on coming here, I'm going to do everything I can to find out if it's going to be a problem for me as well. So I am not, if there are any opposition to it of people that live there, I understand you want to make sure everything that's going to happen here would not be something that will hurt my values or hurt something, where I currently live. If I've got, where I currently live, I enjoy where I live. I wouldn't want somebody to come in and kind of stir it up and make something different. But hopefully we see it as a positive. I see that these units could be beneficial for the center. I see they could help the drive a positive shoppers at each of those locations. So when we came up with this idea, we thought, okay, it's already zoned PB. You can already put apartments here, but you have to have commercial underneath. What's going to be different if we just add just apartments and not do commercial, because commercial's been tough to put there at this point so we see it as beneficial to the restaurants, also to the tenants. Hey, I don't even have to drive, I can walk right over to the store. So with that said, anybody, I appreciate y'all's time.
Thank you. We appreciate you being here. Yes, please. Approach the podium and just give us your name and your address, please.
My name is Kathy McElroy, McCarty McElroy, and we have had the house at 725 Loveless Street since 1963. We don't want to see apartments right there at the back. It's going to be really close, and we would just rather it not be there.
Okay.
And if you choose to be there, if you'll make sure and please make a good barrier to where it is not loud at our house. And is it going to help or hurt taxes? We'll be paying more taxes because there's an apartment back there. To us, it would be lowering the property where we're at, because the apartment doesn't help us any.
We can answer some of those questions and concerns with development. So thank you for bringing those questions up.
Okay.
Mr. Manley, could you speak, one of the questions that was just asked had to do with buffering, and if you go from PB to R5, does that change the buffering requirements of this parcel as it relates to the parcels on Lovelace, sorry?
I believe it does. I have to double check that. I can double check that to see. But because it's a single family, use there, that there's going to be a buffer required, whether it's
Regardless
PV.
of the zoning on
That's
Lovelace?
correct.
Okay.
It's a type
Whether it's
two.
type 1 or type 2, I would
I think
need
it's
to
a
double
type
check.
2.
How quickly could we know the answer to
Can
that?
you take a look at that for us?
Yeah, I can.
Okay.
Great. In the meantime, is there anybody else wishing to speak for or against this?
While Matt's up there.
Well, let's,
Oh, okay.
let's
Excuse
do,
me, go ahead.
let's open up
Fair
between
enough.
us later. Let's finish up public comment and make a list of what we need to deal with first. Please come on up and we'll go ahead and give them time to answer that question. We'd,
I'm Amy Talbert. I'm the property owner of 727 Lovelace Street. And I currently have tenants. They were not able to attend the meeting this evening, but they are also in opposition. And I'm just also backing the McCartys as well. And just some other, I know that before I was not in attendance of the informational. I just kind of got it after the fact. But as far as the parking is concerned, the pastor at Southside has been approached multiple times about the overflow parking that's on the opposite side of the McCarty property. But I think at the informational session, that may have been rectified. I'm not certain. So where will the parking for these apartments be located?
the
put
site
the
plan
site-
shows them on site.
Yeah, we'll-
So the parking
Okay,
is actually
okay,
on site,
okay.
and that's actually
All right.
required for building
Well,
out
someone
there.
approached, I don't know whether it was Mr. Sanjit or his partner or an affiliate or something has approached the church, and the church has turned that completely down. So I just was
Okay.
wanting to
And we
find out
can speak to
information about
parking
that as
requirements
well.
for development per
Okay.
zoning in a moment as
All right,
well.
all right. And so as far as with the zoning that you're proposing, will that, as property owners, does that affect us in any way?
So
Zoning itself does not,
The
because
zoning does
your
not,
parcels
okay.
are not being considered for rezoning. Now,
Correct.
would it affect you? To some degree it would, in that the allowable uses adjacent to you might change. But
Okay.
to Mr. Sanjit's point, he could put apartments in there right now. He would just have to figure out some way to put commercial underneath them, and that just isn't a model.
So, I mean, what's interesting about this, there's a concern about what can happen here, and there's a landowner that has property, and it's zoned currently, PB. And so actually going to what he's requesting, R5, is what we would call a down zone. It's a lesser intense use, which would actually, in most cases, be more desirable to have next to your home. And that's why they're calling it a transition zone, because you're going to have less traffic per hour, less noise, less involvement. It's less commercialized.
Okay.
So a residential zone, even an R5, is a less intense use than what you might expect from a PB or planned business. And that's why the staff's recommendation from a standpoint of intensity, I apologize, it's a new phone, it's really annoying. But that's from a
Technology.
standpoint of the staff's recommendation was that this is appropriate with a land use plan because it decreases the intensity. And so it's not a bad transition thought or proposal. And clearly, we're not the ones proposing it. We just have a property
Understand,
owners who just had
understand.
that thought.
Next question would be, as far as for the developer, are there other apartments that are going to be very similar, if not the same, that are already in place to what he's proposing?
again, that's a
Because he's
good-
saying a 20 apartment, one bedroom, we're thinking about, the socioeconomic status of those that are going to be moving in, and just, what is this actually going to?
That'd be a great question to
involve?
ask the developer.
I
Okay.
want to caution from the planning perspective, we zone uses, we don't zone people. And
Right.
so, and that's not to dismiss the question, it's just to say,
And I think that's just,
You know,
that's
we have to
a
be
very large concern for
sensitive.
my tenants and
Right.
also for the other residents that are there as
and
well.
the truth of the matter is, what gets presented as a concept phase, we've had people come with grand schemes for apartment complexes that we're going to have dog parks and unicorn grazing fields and rainbow factories. And surprisingly, a lot of those niceties don't always materialize. And all we're really dealing with is a land use
It's just for
question.
the zoning,
Right.
okay, all right.
Now, what staff is recommending is a land use plan that would have, or, I'm sorry, not land, but a land use that would have some caveats on it, and Matt spoke to those a little bit earlier. we're not able to really speak to the specifics because we don't own the property and we're not
Certainly.
driving the project. The question
Certainly.
before us is, should it be R5?
Okay. Okay.
Those
Thank
are good
you.
questions.
Thank
and-
you.
And thank you very much for being
And
here.
it seems Mr. Sanchez would like to answer them.
Please, Mr. Sanger, this is actually a unique opportunity for us to have you go ahead and speak up. It's not too busy, please. Let us
Okay.
answer. Go ahead.
Thank you. As far as the buffering goes, I would be that would be concerning to me as well if I lived there. And we will make it more so, is there a picture on the next one? Kind of
Just
what-
pardon me for a moment. Did you guys get an answer on the required L1 or L2 buffer there from a city standpoint?
Yes, so if a PB site was presented to us, it would require a type 2 buffer, which would be a 20-foot buffer distance with 14 trees, that's per 100 feet. Or a 15-foot buffer with a 6-foot fence. With R5, it's a type 1 buffer with a 15-foot spacing and 10 trees, or a 10-foot spacing with a 6-foot fence. That's what we are requiring based on the.
So a level
the
1 buffer.
concept plan for R5. So it is a tier down from what PB would require.
Okay, Mr. Sanger, please, go ahead.
Is it a 1 foot difference as far as where the trees?
5-foot difference.
5 foot.
5 foot and
10 to 15.
So which one are you proposing to do?
Type 1.
What we would propose
required
is to
type
use
1.
the same buffering as far as trees. You know, we could put the same amount of trees that is required in this type 2 zoning. I think that'd be a good compromise. We'd be happy to make sure that there's enough trees. Now, I have been there, obviously, and taken some pictures of the buffering, what it currently looks like, and in the summertime, I don't think you could see the houses very well. I mean, you could speak to that. But maybe in the wintertime, you could see it more often, a little easier without the leaves. So, I mean,
There's already transients. It goes through that, and what we'd like to have is a fence rather than a buffering area with trees. Because that has already happened with commercial property there. They knocked the fence down and started coming through.
I want to make sure we kind of keep control of where there's a place for the developers and the community to get together, and it might be smart to get together with these folks again and just talk about what buffers and our options there, because your buffers aren't just trees. You have an option for a wall, which decreases the length. So, a type 2 buffer with a wall shrinks down to, I think, 10 feet or something as well. So you have some options there. But the point being is that the zoning does make for requirements, going from a more intense use to a lesser intense use, that you do have buffer requirements. And what we tend to see here is people go ahead and negotiate with the developer, because most developers want to be good neighbors and put things in place that are going to be there. But we also understand that the reason, that's why we have ordinances, is so that at least we have a reasonable buffer that's there is what we expect, that you can enforce impartially. But also, the people who own a property and want to develop their land have rights to develop and their property. So this is where that rub is, where we all have to live together. Our question tonight, again, I want to make sure we all understand, is this R5 an appropriate use? Some of the details of the site plan can get worked out a little more closely, as long as they're going to match what our standards would be. And that's where we talked about the pedestrian access. So any further things that you want to add for that?
I just try to make them more comfortable. I would say
Okay.
that as far as the parking goes, we had other ideas, other concepts, and that would have been the reason why we would have needed more parking and
Looking
why
at
we
other
would have looked
options.
we would have done different things. So
Those
it
are
wasn't
great.
for this concept that we needed the parking. So
Okay.
hopefully that puts your mind at ease on that.
And that's
Very good.
because it's one bedroom, they're small enough that they only need one spot per, or how is it?
It's for a lot of different reasons because we had some different concepts.
Okay.
So with this concept, I mean, it could have been, if you did 2 bedrooms, yes, it could have been parking requirements. It could have been a lot of different things that would have changed the parking.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Do we have anybody else wishing to speak for or against? If you don't mind approaching the podium, we'd be glad to chat with you. That way we can hear you.
Yeah, the people in the control room get antsy when they can't hear you.
I'm pretty loud.
But then they can't see you.
I don't want to be seen. My one question then too is, if you decide on trees, once you see trees put out, they die. If they're kept as a barrier and kept alive and let them get big and be the barrier, but we would rather have a wall.
Okay.
It's a great thing to discuss with the developer. Very good, thank you. Anybody else here wishing to speak for or against this moment? Yes, ma'am, please approach the podium and take your name and...
My name is Katie Karsmarzik. I'm with the law firm of Penn, Stewart, and Eskridge, and we're here on behalf of Franklin Square Shopping Center LLC, which owns the Franklin Square Shopping Center located at 1805 West State of Franklin. And we are opposed to this. In addition to the issues raised in the July 2nd letter by Val Nasano, which I believe was addressed to you all, we'd also like to point out two things. First, the neighborhood meeting was held without proper notice. Article 14 of the zoning code states that property owners within 200 feet of the proposed development or rezoning shall be notified in writing at least 10 days prior to the neighborhood meeting. The first we had heard about it was actually from a June 25th letter from the Development Services Department, and we did not hear from the developer until June 27th, which was stating that the meeting would be held on July 2nd. Obviously, this is not within the 10 days. So we've kind of been in a bit of a scramble trying to put together our thoughts on this. So just as a first point. Second, this property is subject to a reciprocal easement agreement, which states, and I'll quote this, establishes certain rights and servitudes in order to facilitate the integrated use thereof as a shopping center. So this basically establishes that the property was meant to be a shopping center only. And the shopping center of restriction would fit within the purview of the PB district, which expressly permits stores and shops conducting retail trade, but it would not fit within the R5 district, which contains no such allowance. So because of this REA, if the property was rezoned for R5, it still cannot be used for residential purposes. But if it is rezoned, it'll also never be developed as a shopping center either because of the REA, unless the property was, again, rezoned to fit within the restrictions. And then, as a side note, since we've been addressing the property, this reciprocal easement, or the parking, this reciprocal easement agreement also states that all improvements situated on a parcel shall have parking space to building square footage ratio of 1 to 200 or greater. So the one parking spot per unit may not be feasible under this REA.
Thank you very much. Do you have anything to add? No? So we have 3 points that she has brought up from understanding. Please, actually, let us adjudicate this and we'll appreciate you. Anybody else wishing to speak for or against this at this point? We can always bring y'all up. Let's go ahead and, at this point, right, it's going to work better if we run that. Let's go ahead and close the public hearing at this point, and then we're going to go ahead and start this talking with staff.
We got a letter today.
So we have 3 points. Number one was the zoning notice for the meeting.
And this is part of our packet.
Was the zoning notice for the meeting made in time?
Yes.
Let's address that. Number two, the reciprocal easement agreement, which we are aware of exists. This is a deed issue that it seems like 2 private parties will have to work out. It's not necessary. So is my understanding of that. Then the third is the concept plan and then the requirements for parking on the concept plan. My question would be there, have we looked at that, and does this concept plan meet the parking requirement?
Yeah, so as far as the notice going out, that is a requirement that the developers send out that notice and that it be 10 days before that meeting is held. We provided a list of addresses to the developer. He mailed us one of the letters, so we received that. I was on the phone with the property manager for this shopping center who stated that he had received some feedback from a property owner concerning this issue, and then he what I could tell from over the phone was that he picked up an envelope and read Brian Sanjid, and I said, no, that's the developer, not a concerned citizen. And so he opened that letter, and it was the notification letter. It wasn't a letter about some concern about the development, as he had thought. So apparently he had received the letter and maybe mistook what it was
When
for.
was this, is this, and so did the notice go out at the appropriate time and then beforehand? Can we say that in the
It-
affirmative, that we have given?
I did not
proper
mail
reading?
letters. It's the developer is required to mail those letters. To the best of my knowledge, they were mailed on time and received as.
And what about the requirement for
code?
the meeting within, has to be?
Yeah,
she
the
said
meeting
8
requirements were
days.
met.
But she
It
said
just has to be
the-
held prior to this, and it was held last Monday.
So it doesn't matter if it's held within 10 days, 4 days?
Hours.
Well-
Was prior to the public hearing, and it has to be noticed 10 days in advance.
Right.
And we're saying that the notice was 10 days in advance to today?
Yes, and, if there was a post office failure or something, I can't speak to everything, but as far as I know, we follow this by the book. The developer, like I said, we've now started requiring that they send us a letter too, so that we're part of their mailing,
date
so that
did you
we're kind
receive
of
the
double
letter?
checking on that.
Just so we can put that on
I'd
the
have to
record.
double check, but it wasn't anything that caused concern at the time. Everything seemed in line.
Are we in deliberation now?
Yes, we are.
Okay, sorry.
So-
Can I ask a question
Yes,
now?
please.
I heard you say, as far as I know. Do you know or do you not know?
Yeah, we need to know.
I
We
did
need
not
to
mail the
know
letters.
whether it went out on time or not.
Well, and
The developer who mailed the letters wants to speak to that. I'd like to speak to a few.
Please.
Because nothing that was said is a surprise. I know that we don't meet the requirements of the shopping center as far as the parking regulations go. It's not a surprise. This is something we've been working on for a while, and the other one was, the other one that wasn't a surprise was the,
Notice.
say, which one, what was the
The
other?
meeting
one?
notice,
Meeting
notice.
notice.
What was that other one, the one other?
The notice is what we want to know.
easement use,
Easement,
the reciprocal easement
This
agreement.
Right, and then there was one more
The
that you
parking.
pointed out,
The parking.
besides the parking.
Parking.
shopping, parking, easement.
Right, there was one more, but
EIO.
What was the date that the letter was?
Okay.
Do you have a
let's-
certified,
Back up, let's.
I didn't bring
let's,
the letter
let's-
with
Let's
me,
answer
so I
each
don't
one
know
of
what
these three
date it
things
was.
in a row.
you know, as far as the reason we put this together and we knew what the reciprocal easement agreement said is.
I'm sorry,
I
I need 3 answers if you don't mind. Let me, the one is the zoning notice. Do you know when you sent out the zoning notice, and can you help us understand if that actually met the requirements? Do you have anything on that?
I didn't look at to see if it had to be 10 days or not,
But we're
so
not
it's,
certain
she's
on
probably
that.
right. She sounds like she knows what she's talking
Okay.
about.
The
But-
reciprocal ease agreement,
Well,
easement
let's
agreement.
not, some of those things, not to, well, I'm going to interrupt.
Well,
I just did. I'm going to say not to interrupt.
I know, but I wanted to try to get through my answers, and then we can have a moment to hit these other things. I'd like to get these particular questions answered.
Down, Jay,
I was
down.
under I was under the impression that what we did was exactly right. So if we didn't do something right, sure, that's
Okay.
not a problem.
The
We
deed.
we can do what we got to do, but the thing is, when we put this concept together, we assumed that 20 units here would only be beneficial to the shopping center. Now, this is the management company. I'm not sure if this management company is the owner of that parcel. I'm not sure if this management company has talked to the owner and it has their blessing or not to be here in opposition. I would think that they have talked to the owner. They wouldn't have driven 4.5, 5 hours to get here and be in opposition to something they haven't even spoke to the owner about. But it would be, I would like to use this time and say, hey, can we speak with the owner of this shopping center? Because I don't want to move forward and spend any more money if the owner of this shopping center is in opposition. But for have 20 units here that could improve the Kroger Center's shopping and can improve the restaurants, and for us to put in a more of a, it's going to have to be on the higher side of a per unit basis in order to make this concept work. So they're going to go in there and spend money if they're going to spend money on their apartment. So I don't see this not being beneficial to everyone, including the neighbors, including the businesses around. But if it's not, it's not, and we'll move on to other projects, and we'll continue to work and.
We appreciate you being here. We're not
Thank you.
adversarial to what you're here to do. We just need to work through the due diligence of approving a project. So thank you very much for trying to answer some of our questions. I'm thinking here, as we have several.
Family.
I have an answer to your question about
Please.
the date, and I stand corrected. It was June 27th. The meeting was held on July 2nd, so that does not meet the 10-day notice.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion that we table this for 30 days to give the developer time to give adequate notice of the neighborhood meeting.
I agree.
I think a lot of the questions that we're dealing with here could probably be constructively addressed in that forum. I particularly value the neighborhood meetings because generally speaking, when they happen and they happen in a timely way, we don't end up trying to untie a knot like we've got in front of us tonight. And so that would be my motion.
I was hoping you'd make that motion.
You got multiple seconds.
Pick who you want.
And with that said, please hear, we would like to see the proposed project get a reasonable hearing from the neighbors and all the stakeholders. That, some of what's been raised tonight are not things that a planning commission appropriately addresses.
Right.
And so the more of that can be done in advance of bringing the request, the more likely you are to have a winning outcome for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, just from a standpoint of what we see routinely, going from a planned business to an R5 in a transition zone is generally not seen as something that would be inappropriate in any way with the land use plan in this area. The question is these particular restrictions, which many of them seem more of a personal property developmental issue, just what are you constrained to do with the people near you? And that's not a land use question so much. And we can answer that, but some of this other needs to be worked out. Please call the roll.
Okay. The motion is to table the item for 30 days. Commissioner Lowe?
To table it for 30 days to allow the developer sufficient time to provide the requisite 10-day notice of a neighborhood meeting.
Okay.
Yep.
To allow, table for 30 days to allow the developer ample time to hold the required neighborhood meeting. All right.
So-
Commissioner Lowe?
Yes.
Commissioner Williamson?
Yes.
Commissioner Marshoni?
Yes.
Commissioner Williams?
Yes.
Commissioner Cooper?
Yes.
Commissioner Wise?
Yes.
Commissioner Pavlich?
Yes.
Commissioner Wild?
Yes.
Commissioner Harrell?
Yes.
And Chairman Zając?
Yes.
Motion approved.
Thank you. And please use our staff as a resource over this next 30 days to help answer the questions of the parking spaces and what we have with the deed. We have a number of folks in the city who can help sort of work through all that. If it's appropriate, we'd be glad to try to help. So thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you for raising your questions, and we'll be glad to look at it again in a month. So next item on the agenda was the discussion of the West Walnut Corridor plan draft. And so give everybody a chance to go away who's done with the other one. Hey, Song, thank you. So this is being presented to us for information to help us understand where we are in this process, moving along towards a further evaluation and then possibly adopting the plan. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Basically, what you have is a draft of the plan at this time, and we're sourcing comments from the Planning Commission. You read through it, any issues you find, and we will send those comments back to the developer to address them in the final product will be presented before you for approval. So it's really left to the Planning Commission to decide on how you want to go about having these comments or feedback session, if I can put it that way.
Is there anyone here tonight who wished to offer comment on it because it was on our agenda?
Yeah.
If anybody from the public has come to submit some ideas, we'd be glad to hear them right now. We will be working together in some public workshop meeting sessions, hopefully with the plan consultant, and we will be gathering some more information on that and providing more input within the next month, hopefully.
Within the next month, yes. And we're going to put this on the city website. It will be there for
So is there
2
anybody
weeks.
here that wish?
Public feedback.
Sorry. Nobody here wishing to speak? Okay, great. I just want to make sure that we did open it. I'm sorry, Esong. Okay, we'll close that. Go ahead.
Motion to adjourn.
Well,
You never forget to talk.
He said
This
he's
is
gonna
his
do
first
it.
time.
you took a breath.
Go ahead.
So with respect to having the public speak on this, we're going to have this on the city's website. There will be a time for public input right up to July 26. And then after that, we'll collect all the comments and send to the consultant to address them. And then we'll bring them back before the Planning Commission for approval of the plan itself. And at that time, the public will still have an opportunity to speak.
And have we made it clear our desire to have a workshop with the Kimley Horn folks in our minutes?
I think we should. Make it be known in our minutes.
Well, I guess I would make a motion. I think this is a pretty important project, and I think the more that the commission can be up to speed on it, we ought to avail ourselves of that. And so I would make it a motion that staff be asked to invite representatives of Kimley Horn to a workshop with the Planning Commission. As one who's been involved in this project now for several years, you've got major stormwater, parking, infrastructure, utility elements to, and allocation of right-of-way elements to this project, and we need everybody here to be up to speed with how when you push on it from one direction, it can have consequences in others, and we want to make the best possible decision. So that's a motion.
That's a
I think
motion.
it
We have a
did-
second. We have a second. All in favor? Aye. No opposed? None. So that seems to pass that we will ask staff to put that together with Kimberly Horn.
Yes.
It sounds weird.
You just mumble at everyone as soon as you said it.
And we have proposed some dates that we're hoping as a primary choice, August the
August
6th. August the 6th as a primary choice, maybe the 7th if that doesn't work. And otherwise, we could look at it for the week of the 23rd and 24th if those don't work.
I will propose those dates to the developer and to the consultant and send out emails to the.
Great.
Thank you.
Appreciate your work, putting it together for us. Thank you very much. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to bring to the table?
You're up, Stacy.
Oh, motion to adjourn.
Okay. All in favor? Aye. Adjourn. All right.
All this room.
Here you go, Ms. Nicole. This is all yours.
I was talking about parking on one side, bike lanes on one side.